Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with over 40 years of combined experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate important topics. A friendly reminder that this video is meant for conversational and entertainment purposes only. Please see the information section of this video for additional resources. So, Dr. Gideon, introduce yourself.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Stacey Gedian. I'm a health psychologist and the founder of a healthcare consulting company and also do professional coaching. And you, Dr. Radico.
Yeah, so I'm Julie Radico. I'm a psychologist, coach, author, and a speaker. Our question today is what makes it important for me to be aware of how I talk to myself? And I'm mindful as we start talking about this idea of self-talk and this idea of like being aware of how we're talking to ourselves, that what we say inside our heads is just as important as what we say out loud.
We live with ourselves 100% of the time. We can't get away. And what we think and tell ourselves, gosh, that impacts our emotions, our confidence level, our performance, our behaviors, our decisions. And it's critical to be aware if you're having a lot of negative self-talk
Mm.
that then is starting to impact all of those things in your life. And I think we've both worked with people and ourselves as well and our loved ones. And maybe we overhear them because they will say out loud, "Oh, I can't believe I messed that up. I'm so, dumb," or "I'm a failure." And if they're telling themselves all of the time, it kind of reminds me of the phrase, "You are what you think." We used to talk about you are what you eat, but you are what you think.
The labeling of themselves
Mhm.
as I'm dumb, I'm stupid, rather than, oh, I did something dumb or I did something stupid. I hear that a lot. I hear this negative prediction, like you're saying, and sometimes it turns into catastrophizing. Like, negative prediction is, I need to do a presentation at work, I'm gonna mess it up. Or I have this big test exam like coming up, I'm gonna fail it. And catastrophizing is kind of that next step of that of, oh, I'm gonna screw up this presentation and then they're gonna fire me and I'm not gonna be able to pay my mortgage and I'm gonna live in a box on the street. Or, I'm gonna fail this exam and I'm never gonna make it in my career or my profession and I'm gonna end up living with my parents until the rest of time. All of those unhelpful thoughts tend to come up pretty often working with people who are very driven, very
Mhm.
motivated, and we slip into this type of self-criticism, negative prediction. The what ifs also come up a lot. What if I what if I mess it up? So rather than like your thought just focusing on the, oh, I'm gonna mess it up, that negative prediction, and then catastrophizing about it, it might also just be you're prepared, you've done all the things you can do, and then your mind has this, well, what if I
Mhm.
still mess it up?
Yeah, that doubt that comes in. And even if we look at what happens physiologically, so if I'm getting ready to give a presentation and in my head I'm telling myself, oh, you're nervous, you're going to mess up, you didn't remember that one section. What if nobody shows up? What if everybody's asleep? And that's going to trigger my fight or flight. And guess what? I am not going to focus as well. And so I've now just increased the odds of all of those things happening. And so it works against us to do that. We can flip it around with our mindset and start to tweak those things. And we still want to be realistic. If I say to myself, I'm going to have the best, presentation that ever existed on the universe, you know, that's not going to happen. But there's a lot of space in between complete failure and the best
Mm.
presentation ever. And being realistic about that and going in with that positive mindset and not expecting perfection. We've talked about that before, how that can be such a trap. And so we
Mm.
need to be mindful of what it does to us physiologically and how telling ourselves negative things will often then create that thing. It's Henry Ford's quote, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. And
Mm.
that speaks to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's that another jargony way that we often talk about it is self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
This you exactly like you're saying, you tell yourself you can't do something, and then maybe your anxiety increases so much around it that you were capable of it, and now you're just so stressed that you're not going to perform as well as you maybe could have. And that that reinterpretation of the heart pounding, shortness of breath, sweatiness, lightheadedness, that our bodies can tell us that that's fear and anxiety. If I told you right now you just won the lottery, what's your body going to do? It's
Mhm.
like how you're interpreting it of, oh, well, my heart is going to start pounding. I'm going to have shortness of breath. I'm going to maybe feel lightheaded and sweaty because I'm excited. And so if you're standing on the edge of, like the entrance of a stage to start going to give your presentation and you're interpreting those physiological feelings as, oh, this is my body telling me that I'm gonna do terribly and I'm anxious and gonna go have a panic attack. Like, okay, that's the reality that you're making. That's the self-talk that you are creating for yourself. And what if you told yourself it was excitement? That your body is like revving you up to be as exuberant and energized and entertaining as you possibly could be when you're on that stage.
Absolutely. And then that makes me think of working with people, and they'll have this narrative about themselves, this negative belief about their abilities or their accomplishments. And sometimes it's helpful to stop and say, okay, wait a minute, where's that coming? Whose voice are you hearing?
Mm,
And people will stop and think because they've sort of absorbed and incorporated maybe a critical teacher or a coach or even a parent, and that sort of entered into their brain and their mindset as their own when it really isn't. And it can be helpful then to have folks challenge that
mm,
just because that person said those. And we've both worked with people that have actually been exposed to some pretty awful things and been
wow.
told some horrible things. And
Yeah.
it takes definitely time and support to be able to unravel all of that.
Mm,
But that's something that can be very useful is asking yourself, okay, it may come from you. And there's a chance that it could come from, it could be somebody else's voice that is from the past that's sort of turning up in your life today that's interfering with your functioning.
who do you want to be inside of your head? Whose voice do you want to be loudest? And really being thoughtful about noticing, yeah, if some of that negative stuff, it sounds like your coach from when you were growing up, your teacher, your parents, that like really being mindful to know you're not back in that space again and to hopefully do some good work, whether with a therapist, a coach, to feel safe, to own your own voice and to make that the loudest and to for that to be like a cheerleading type of voice.
Mhm.
I'm mindful that a good question to ask yourself when you are wondering if what you're saying to yourself, your self-talk is helpful or not, or
Mm,
if it's teetering on the line of being unkind or unproductive is asking yourself if someone I cared about had that same thought or came to me and said that my thought to themselves, like they were like, oh yeah, I just told myself I'm a dumb idiot.
mhm.
What would I say to them? Would you say, like, yep, you sure are. I hope you feel terrible and you just, shouldn't even take up any space? No. Noticing and using that as a litmus test of, wow, am I being way too harsh on myself right now? Am I being overly critical? And is the voice that is getting the highest volume right now some voice that's not helping me in any kind of way?
Mhm. And yeah, I think also reframing a thought that you're having. So I'm going to fail at this, or let's say you did botch something. Okay, well, chances are it's not as bad as I thought. I can learn, I can grow from this. We're always talking about, that mindset of what can I learn and not entering into catastrophizing and fortune telling and all those things that kind of get in the way. And it is important to balance it with the context that you're in and not go down that spiral of despair and not feeling worthy. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't do and they're surprised when they do it is writing down their accomplishments. So much we're waiting for
Mhm.
the big end accomplishment, and there's so much that we do along the way. And if we don't recognize those stepping stones, it can be hard. And so let's say
Yeah.
the big accomplishment maybe didn't go as you had thought. You could beat yourself up over that. Or you could look, okay, well, maybe that didn't end up how I wanted, but all these steps, look what I did. Look how far I've come.
Yeah, taking stock of what you've learned and your successes in small incremental steps that you're taking as you work towards a big goal. I'm mindful as we talk about this that a lot of really strong, powerful, thoughtful professionals, especially the professional women I work with, tend to evaluate themselves based on their achievements.
Mm,
And if they are not getting the big promotion, they're not getting, the biggest award, just as you're talking about in this example of maybe they got told no at the very end, or like they did all this great work on a grant submission and it didn't work out. That if they're not taking stock of all of the wins along the way and all that they've achieved, then that achievement drive and mindset that they're like sort of focused on and they're deciding some of their self-worth on really can get rocked when they're like, oh, nothing counts except for I got to get the big end goal here. And if I don't, then now I'm gonna be even more negative to myself and my self-talk of like, oh, you're awful, you're trash, you shouldn't even have tried. Like all of the negative, unhelpful stuff comes streaming in because they're not taking stock of all that they've learned, all they've achieved along the way, but also just like their achievements don't define their worth.
mhm.
And our self-talk can really get us stuck in a place of you have to be perfect, you have to be achieving, you have to be doing certain things to make yourself or others know how good you are and how worthwhile you are. And then that's a slippery slope
Mm.
to having lots of negative, critical thoughts going on in our own heads that are very demeaning and tear us down and are just unproductive.
Yes, and they don't move you towards whatever goal it is that you're wanting. And that can be something that we always emphasize noticing things. And if you're noticing that you're beating yourself up a lot, we hear people say all the time, I'm my own worst critic. Oh no, gosh, I would never say that to my son or daughter, what I say to myself. And that should be sort of a cue that okay,
Mm.
wait a minute, maybe I'm taking this a little bit too far. Even something like, oh, I was set on having these new behaviors to improve my health, and I was going to exercise every other day, and I missed a couple of days. Well, if we say, oh, I'm a failure now, I'm so lazy, I can't believe it, I never finish anything I start. How is that going to motivate you to get back on track? It doesn't. And so the thinking is not helpful. And what's more helpful, that type of thinking, what's more helpful is to say, okay, you know what? Yeah, I had a couple days off. I'm human, and I'm going to get back on track as soon as I can and do what I can to get rid of any barriers that got in the way before. And then you're much more likely to continue with the goal that you wanted.
Oh, yeah. So a key takeaway I have is be your own cheerleader, be your own support system. Think about what you would say to somebody that you care about. If you are starting to notice that you're feeling down, frustrated, annoyed, anxious, angry, name a negative emotion. If you've noticed that your mood is shifting that way, you're likely thinking something in your like self-talk that is pulling you down, and it maybe is self-critical, cruel to yourself, unhelpful in some type of way. You're predicting the future in a negative way. Catch that. Ask yourself as we've been saying, what would you say to somebody that you care about who's having that same thought, and internalize that towards yourself. Like what would a compassionate, kind version of you want you to know when you're thinking negative stuff?
I love that. I would add on as a takeaway is being mindful of the story you're telling yourself, and is it helping you or is it holding you back?
Mm,
Once you're aware of that, then you can make changes.
yeah. Yeah. Recognizing your patterns.
Mhm.
Love it. If this topic resonated with you, please share it with somebody that you care about. Also, please comment, like, subscribe. You can message us on our LinkedIn or YouTube accounts to suggest questions that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes.